Spence, it's not the same Spence. It's not the same Spence that we used to see. So I didn't want that fight to happen, and I'm glad it didn't happen because now I get my opportunity too. After Terence fought him, after the accidents, after all that has happened to him, I don't feel like he's been the same. You gotta know when to give the next generation the opportunity to fight for those titles. The fight to make for me is Fundora. He's the champion at WBO, champion at WBC. I'm number 1 at the WBO, number 3 at WBC. So I feel like he's the focus. If Madrimov gets the victory and it's a fight that we can make happen and make sense and he would like to take it, I would love to face him too.
Xander Zayas dominates Sephora, but does he have the power to beat fighters like Errol Spence? What's good, everybody? It's your boy, Cardinal Red Sports, with a quick check-in. So I'm sitting here getting ready for this Keyshawn Davis-Berincic fight, and I got the pleasure of watching the Xander Zayas fight. I've heard his name before, but I've never gotten to watch him fight live. And he gave a really dominant performance. Let me say that his performance was immaculate. He won from bell to bell. He has a very high punch output. Got a great boxing IQ. He can move. But the one problem I have with Zayas is that I don't think his power is there. I don't think he has the power to stop some of these 154-pound fighters. Because Sephora, you could tell he's one of those Ukrainian guys. They can take a punch and they're going to stand in there and fight with you. But he was so much smaller than Xander Zayas that Zayas should have knocked him out a long time ago. And it was kind of like not getting boring, but kind of getting repetitive just watching him beat on the smaller guy. And give Sephora a lot of credit because there were some rounds he almost knocked Xander Zayas out, and he was clocking him pretty clean. And he stood in there pretty much to the end of the fight until the ref finally had to stop it. I don't think he stopped it or had to have stopped it because of just the punch output of Xander Zayas, because I think Sephora could have made it to the final bell, but Xander Zayas landed a few low blows. And I mean a few, maybe like 3 or 4. But you could tell that they were low blows that he's not meaning to throw because Sephora was so much smaller than him. So he's throwing these really wide looping hooks, and they're catching him right, not hooks, but uppercuts, and they're catching him, right below the belt. And good fight on both guys' accord. You got to give Sephora credit for sticking in there for so long, and you got to give Xander Zayas credit for dominating the fight. The question is, if you put, let's say, Xander Zayas, say that 10 times fast, in a fight with a guy like Errol Spence, but I think this would be a good matchup for Spence to come back on, because he's undefeated. He seems to have a little bit of popularity, got a story behind him. And Errol Spence needs a name. He was trying to get that Sebastian Fundora fight. I'm not sure why that fell apart or what actually happened with that. But I'm hoping that he still does get that situation and we do get that Errol Spence Sebastian Fundora fight, because that would set up a lot of big things in the 154 division, as far as perhaps a rematch if this situation with Canelo and Crawford really doesn't happen. Because I'm still curious to see what happened in a rematch with Errol Spence and Terence Crawford at a different weight when both of these guys are technically at their best. Because Errol Spence had been saying for the longest that he couldn't make 147 anymore, and perhaps Terence Crawford took advantage of it. Perhaps he just beat the crap out of Errol Spence. But this Xander Zayas guy is one of those fighters. If you can't get Fundora in the ring and you can't get, you're not going to fight Charlo, you can't get Terence Crawford to fight you. I believe that the other name is Victor Ortiz. If you can't get Victor Ortiz in the ring either because he's already committed, then the next best thing would be to get in there with Xander Zayas and see what this kid really got, and see if you can knock this kid out, and let this be your test, because this kid, he has good boxing ability. He has decent enough speed. He knows how to work a ring. I want to see him against a bigger opponent like Errol Spence, and everybody says Errol Spence's career is done at this point, so I'm curious to see, can Errol make a comeback off of this kid. This kid already has a built-in story. They were saying that he's been fighting Xander Zayas, that he's been fighting since he was 10 years old, and he got signed when he was like 16. I've heard his name before, and I've seen him on Instagram before, but I've never watched him once again fight live. So Errol Spence in a comeback fight, I think this would be the perfect situation. If you can't get the Fundora fight, if you can't get the Virgil Ortiz fight, if you can't get, the Terence Crawford rematch, if you're not going to fight your buddy Charlo, and I don't know what's going on with the other Charlo, but perhaps he fights the other Charlo. I think he's cool with one, but not the other. So perhaps he fights one of the Charlos. Or there's always a wild card out there, and I would hate to see Errol Spence in a comeback fight have to fight Boots Ennis. But if that's what's necessary for Errol to make his comeback, then, I said before he got beat that Errol should have went after Boots, because it would have gave him, the same effect if he beat Boots as if he beat Terence Crawford, because Boots is so talented. No, he doesn't have the resume that Terence Crawford has. No, he doesn't have the championship pedigree that Terence Crawford has. But he's already got a built-in name. Philly's behind him. People love Boots. And I think Boots is going to be really big. So if Earl, like when Mayweather caught Canelo, could have caught Boots early instead of going after Terence Crawford, perhaps he beats Boots. Boots still makes a name for himself. But Earl gets, the accolades of beating a young Boots. Like Mayweather got the accolades of beating a young Canelo. So I think sometimes in boxing, you can be your own worst enemy. I think Errol Spence, there were two dynamics at play with that Terence Crawford fight that really messed up his career. One, the undisputed thing, and then two, that he knew he couldn't make that weight, but he decided to go forward with it. And I gotta wonder why we would still go forward with it, knowing that it was not going to end in your favor, So this is a way for him to come back, though. I think this Xander Zayas kid, he's the real deal, and he's got good skill. Once again, the only problem I think that he's going to have is, can his power carry him actually through a fight with a fighter like Errol Spence Jr., or perhaps he gets somebody else. Perhaps Boots decides to go after him, because we don't know yet if Boots is going to stay at 147 pounds. Boots is kind of like, he doesn't, I guess we'll know after he fights Standing Honest whether he's going to stay or not, because he said that he wanted to unify titles, so perhaps he'll unify titles with Standing Honest, and that'll be his, last fight at 147, and then he's going to go after the money fights up at 154, because I think that would be the best bet for Boots. There's not a lot of big names, unless Keith Thurman comes back down to 147 and comes back sometime soon, and Boots gets to beat up on Thurman. But y'all let me know in the comment section what y'all think about Xander Zayas. Does he have the power to beat Errol Spence Jr.? And we are out of here.